This is me, a self-made photographer, filmmaker, entrepreneur, athlete, traveler, designer, and honor roll student. Yeah, that's a lot of things, but the thing I love most in life is exploring, and that takes me back to this moment right here, the beginning of a trip that will forever change my life. Day 1. I woke up at a decent time, ate a quick breakfast, and made my way to the airport. After getting through customs, we picked up some food and waited to be boarded. This is my first time flying outside North America, and I was a bit nervous, but excited to explore the unknown. On the flight there, we got pillows and blankets to sleep with, as well as 2 meals of food, which weren't the greatest, but what can you expect? I actually got this special box of chocolates from a flight attendant because she felt bad for dropping a can of Pringles on my head. They came in this rustic wooden box with different chocolates from different countries. So let's do a taste test, because why not? I would give these up. After flying for 9 hours, we landed in Frankfurt. We refueled with some gourmet-style airport food and hopped on another flight to Lisbon. We spent the rest of the night at the hotel and explored the rooftop patio during the sunset. And I gotta say, my hopes were very high for this trip. And I can tell you right now, it only got better from here.
Brother, what's that?
Day 2. A day around Lisbon, a town covered in beautiful sights, architecture, colors, people, and artwork. Lisbon is considered to be the San Francisco of Europe, with both having a sensational bridge crossing the river, streets covered in pristine architecture, and with trolleys that roam the streets. I would say they are pretty much identical to one another. Except Lisbon isn't ruled by war-driven apes. Anyways, we spent the morning on a panoramic tour exploring different sites in the bus and getting off here and there. We first stopped at a viewpoint that overlooked the downtown area of Lisbon with the statue of Eduardo VII away in the distance. The scenery was photo-worthy and I managed to capture a few images, but nothing too good as I was still getting warmed up. We then traveled through the downtown portion of Lisbon, seeing a few famous buildings and streets through the windows of the bus. Before heading to lunch, we made a few stops along the way, such as the Jerónimos Monastery built in 1501 to honor Portuguese exploration, which we spent some time admiring. We then headed to the Belém Tower and Padrão dos Descobrimentos, which were both across the street from the monastery, but for some reason we still bussed over. The Belém Tower was used as a defensive system for many decades, watching over the flowing Tagus River and having a view of the vast Portuguese landscape. This mammoth of a statue was built to honor Henry the Navigator's death and his trading route discoveries during the 15th century. Finishing up the panoramic tour, we headed through the streets of downtown Lisbon to find something to eat and drink. After gulping down a French baguette sandwich, I know, French food in Portugal, but, a man's gotta eat. And after nearly getting attacked by a gang of pigeons, we then began our trek to some city viewpoints. We stopped at a few points overlooking the western side of Lisbon, and being able to see all these uniquely designed and colored buildings all in one frame was truly astonishing. We hiked up the hills a bit more until we reached the Castelo de Jorge, with views all around the castle, beautiful peacocks, and sturdy structures. My experience walking around this castle and taking a few photos was calming and definitely a favorite of mine. We then made our way back downtown, saw this cool looking tuk-tuk, and rode one of those famous trolleys up a small hill. It was kinda slow, but overall, a pretty good experience. Continuing our trek, we arrived at Fado and Chiado, a special Portuguese singing and instrumental performance. This is probably my least favorite part of the day, and I think most of us agreed on that. To end the first day of our travels, we ate some dinner at a local restaurant and made our way back to the hotel for some much needed rest. Day 3. The first of many travel days to come. Today we plan to stop in Coimbra and explore this little roadside town and then head north to Porto to spend the night.
Water was too much. I'm trying to order a drink over here. Where's the bartender?
After arriving, we explored this small hillside town, walking up and down the alleyways, looking at all the different beautiful streets and buildings, as well as grabbing a bite to eat before meeting up with the rest of the group.
Hey, and what we get? Pull up, pop. Ready, fast.
The vibe in this small little town was like nothing I've ever seen before, and every building was unique and designed in a way that created an enclosed environment, which I really liked. These short and long alleys made for some great photo compositions, and this viewpoint was a perfect way to capture the essence of the entire town within one frame. With the group all together, we headed up the streets to Coimbra University. We visited a few churches and chapels along the way, as well as an ancient library which has some very dusty books. We weren't allowed to take many photos in these places, which was unfortunate, but I can't break the law in another country. Anyways, after exploring these beautiful time-worn buildings, we hung out in the square of the university. Coimbra University is also one of the oldest universities in the world and the oldest one in Portugal itself. After some time, we were allowed inside the presidential palace where we explored various rooms and views. This rooftop view was probably my favorite part of the day, and I spent a good 20 minutes up there on this tiny 3-foot ledge, taking as many photos as I could. I knew for sure I would regret this after the trip. About an hour later, we all headed back down to the streets of Coimbra, where we walked around some more before getting back to the bus. The bus ride to Porto was about another 2 hours, and we arrived at the hotel around dinner time. Park Hotel was a group favorite as the rooms were nice and big. Despite this creepy dark hallway, I did manage to survive walking to my room alone, and towards the end of the night, we all headed out for a night walk and goofed around in some random city square.
Bro, what? I didn't think
Day 4. A relaxing day in Porto, a small riverside town located in the northern part of Portugal, and a top-3 place from throughout this trip. With another hotel breakfast in our stomachs, we headed into downtown Porto. We started the morning off by exploring what the city had to offer on foot, seeing many amazing sights, ancient buildings, and visiting a few churches and chapels. Tired of churches yet? Yeah, me too. While on this walk, I ended up capturing some of my best images from this entire trip. It just felt like the streets were so vibrant and full of life that every turn there was an even better photo opportunity. I love capturing the people in this small, lively town, and it seemed like everyone had a story that just needed to be framed. Before lunch, we were told that we would be returning back to this downtown riverside portion of Porto to watch the sunset over the horizon. This had me extremely excited for the rest of the day. We then had a break for lunch where we stopped for some riverside burgers and fries. The food was absolutely delicious, the views even better. We then all met up and got back on the bus and headed to Braga, the shopping central of Portugal. I think at this point everyone was exhausted. The jet lag was really starting to kick in after some exciting first few days. We stopped at this church overlooking Braga, which is beautifully designed with many colorful garden beds. We then began our journey back to Porto for sunset and arrived about an hour later. In smaller groups, we explored the city for a while before heading to this bridge that crossed the Douro River to view the setting sun over the Porto skyline. The views and experience from this architectural stunning bridge was absolutely perfect. The orange sky matched perfectly with the vintage look of this riverside town, and every photo I took was just so good. Once the sun set, we began our trek back to the meeting point, capturing the amazing nightlife of this small Portuguese town. That was it for today, and I believe everyone was tired. Day 5. A long day around Santiago de Compostela, filled with magnificent churches and windy old town roads. I think today was the least activity-focused day, which was a good break from the first half of the trip. We started the morning off with a park hotel breakfast and a 3-hour bus ride to Santiago de Compostela. Immediately after arriving in this old town, we broke off into small groups and explored the old cobblestone roads. It was like a maze. I'm surprised we didn't get lost. We gobbled down some lunch and met up with the group again for a guided tour around this small little town. After walking around for about an hour or so and capturing a few moments in time, which I really liked, we headed back to the bus and drove to our hotel. This hotel was placed inside a mall and almost felt like we were in mainland China. It was dead quiet in the mall when a few of us explored it, and it just had the eerie feeling to it, which was just weird. The upside to this was the amazing sunset views outside our hotel window and the peace and quiet of not being near a highway or busy road. Around dinner time, we got food at a place inside the mall, and not to be picky at all, despite being a picky eater, the food here was terrible. It wasn't appetizing or appealing at all, just tasteless and awful. I managed to eat a bit, but I think everyone was disappointed in the food, and I think everyone went to bed a little hungry that night, and headed back to the hotel for some much needed rest. Day 6. This was officially a travel day. With a 6-hour bus ride ahead of us, the morning started off with another awful meal. We were all pretty hungry, and everyone ate most of their snacks soon after. We rode on the bus for around 3 hours and stopped for some food at a gas station, and everyone devoured the food right away. I got this chicken sandwich, and it was the best food I had probably eaten in the last 24 hours, despite being gas station food. We arrived in Bilbao about 3 hours later and had a short 20-minute walk around the town before arriving at the Guggenheim Museum. The design and layout of this museum was very neat and attention-grabbing. However, a lot of the art I didn't really find interesting. The art was kind of lame and I didn't really understand a lot of it, so I decided to leave early and instead just take a few photos. We had another hotel dinner before hitting the hay for that night. Day 7. San Sebastian. Paradise on earth. This place was absolutely beautiful, and I'm glad we spent the entire day exploring this seaside town. I would 100% visit here again. We first stopped at the seaside lookout, which had a great panoramic view of the entire town. The views from this lookout, and with all the colors mixed together, I was already loving this place, and we had just got here. We then got back on the bus and headed up this small hill using a tram, and at the top of the hill was an amusement park where we spent some time on a few rides and exploring this extremely high rooftop view. The views were absolutely stunning, and I couldn't wait to spend more time here. With a little walk around town, we had some free time where we got something to eat for lunch and explored these narrow streets before meeting up again. Collectively, we all decided to stay for the rest of the day in San Sebastian, as everyone seemed to really enjoy this seaside town. With 3 hours of free time on the clock, a small group of us decided to go explore this hill and climb our way to the statue all the way at the top. We walked around the entire hill, slowly climbing up the entire mountain to the statue. The views along the way were beautiful and just incredible. Nothing like I had ever seen before. This was definitely the highlight of the trip. With more amazing views at the top, the hike was well worth it. We then got back on the bus and headed back to the hotel for dinner and ended the night with some fun at the arcade.
I spent $10.
Bugatti!
Day 8. Another travel day was a surprise stop in a small French border town, which had some great views and a good time to stretch their legs. After a short drive, we arrived in Lourdes and began our visit by walking around this castle with views all around the town. I captured some decent images, and I think this was the best part of the day, and it was really the only part of the day that wasn't on the bus. The food was excellent here, however the people I would consider otherwise. We then got some free time and grabbed a quick food truck lunch before exploring this huge castle, which I can't even begin to pronounce the name of this thing. We then hopped on the bus and headed on our way to Andorra. With a late night dinner, everyone went to bed shortly after. Day 9. Rain, rain, and more rain. We did some shopping in the morning and saw some rather extraordinary things. It started to rain on us, so we all decided to head back to the hotel, and we hopped on the bus to Barcelona, and after passing through a couple borders, we arrived in the heart of Barcelona. We broke off into small groups to complete a scavenger hunt, and as soon as it started, the rain absolutely poured on us. Soaked from head to toe, we just decided to hide out under cover, and I picked up this delicious treat before meeting up with the rest of the group. There were a few cool looking statues, and I captured a handful of decent images to go along with those. We had paella for dinner before heading back to the hotel. Day 10. The day everyone dreaded. One last day in Spain, the trip was finally nearing its end. We had a panoramic tour around Barcelona to start the day, with the first stop being this lookout point at Mirador, Barcelona. We only had a few short minutes here. We then got back on the bus and then off again and walked a few blocks to the Sagrada Familia. This was an absolutely massive church or chapel which towered over the Barcelona skyline. It was really cool to see this in person, and the scale was just insane. During our break around this place, I captured some amazing wildlife images, and I believe this one was my favorite of them all. We then made our way to the Park Güell, which had some fascinating art structures and just was overall interesting to look at. To finish off the trip, we were entertained by this musical performance called the Flamenco. Then it was back to our hotel for an early morning flight the next day. There are no words to put this trip into perspective. The adventure was like nothing I'd ever done before. I learned so many things, not just about the world, but about the people around me. Some of my fondest memories of my teenage years were created on a short 12-day exploration around Spain and Portugal. Thanks for watching.